the first thing, what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate the random number generator and see whether indeed it's producing Gaussians. And to do that, we're going to create a map which is going to count these things. So, since we're writing, I'm going to put IO as the class. So let's. Okay, so what we're gonna do, and I'll get to the command line a little bit later, but the first thing is, well, let's generate, that's gonna be how many we're gonna generate. Oops, new random. Okay, so that's going to be generating our stuff. All right, now for the map. Now, the thing to understand, there are two interfaces. One is a regular map, which can be anything, and the other sorted map, which can only be, like, say, a tree map. But just to kind of put a point on it. Let's see, counts. I do want to keep these sorted, but again, just to make it clear, no red squiggly, that means a tree map is a map, and the way it will behave is the way that the instance is working. Okay, so what I'm going to do is basically I want to increase the standard deviation of 1. See, I'm going to put integers in there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to round off the values and just stick them in as integers. Okay, see how that's going to work. And just to kind of spread it out a little more, I'm going to make the standard deviation 50. I might need to make it bigger, but okay, so okay, so oops. Let's first generate the 1, and next Gaussian, and I'm going to multiply it by the standard deviation. Now, if I take a standard Gaussian and I multiply it by the standard deviation, then that will give me a normal or a Gaussian with a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of whatever I've given it. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to just round that off. Oops, round. All right, so, but it turns out that the round operation only works on, I'm rounding a double, it's going to return a double. So what I have to do is I'm going to cast that to an int. So once I round it, that double value is going to be an integer value, but it's still going to be syntactically a double, and I can't put a double into an integer without signaling that that's really what I want. Okay, so, well, just to, I'll first show you the kind of, this is the old way, because it's still a useful useful thing. So there's a method called contains key, and it does exactly what it says. If this is true, if the count contains this key, and if it does, and again, you can do this in fewer lines, but remember, just to make it clear what's happening here, Okay, first I get it, and then this is where some of you might be tempted to do like a plus plus. Just to, what would happen if I did this instead? Remember how the increment operator works? Is any, I mean, you can tell me the truth. Is anybody tempted to do something like this? Because you saved a couple of keystrokes. What is the value of the expression old count plus plus? Is that going to be 1 greater than old count? Or it's going to be the old value? So this is just going to keep putting in the same value if it ever gets there. All right. Oops. Okay, so this is a lot more typing. I mean, one of the reasons to use the other possibilities, it's a bit more typing. On the other hand, it's a little clearer what's happening here, in my opinion. You know, so with all that typing, I mean, I would still use one of the other ones, but nevertheless, this is a very useful pattern because you're not always kind of doing something like this. In other words, sometimes I just want to know, is this key in there, and I want to do something else. All right, so now I've put all these things in there. Let's see what we get. I mean, one of the things we can do, just to okay, one way to iterate, we can iterate over the key set. And let's just, oops. Over here. Oh, let's put it in the tab. Okay. Value. Oh, and I should give myself a new line. Okay, so, all right, so let's, how am I doing? I'm only doing 100,000. That's actually not a whole lot, but let's see what this looks like. Okay, so we see that there are values from -68 all the way through +65. And just kind of looking at it, we can see that it kind of tapers off and then gets fat in the middle. You know, so that's looking fairly good. So all right, so this is kind of worked. Now we want to so now I want to put this into a file. First of all, I want to do a whole bunch more because notice it literally took 0 seconds. So what if I generated a bunch more? And as I generate a bunch more, notice that the possible values get greater. So now I'm going from -7, you know, just the more I generate, the wider the range is going to be. Okay, but I want to put that into a file. And that's what, and what file do I want to put it in? Well, that's what the command line argument is going to tell me. So here's something that I've found to be useful. The first thing is that what if there's nothing on the command line? What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it kind of a default. And remember, args is an array of strings, and strings have a length, And that length can be either greater than 0 and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be writing these to a comma separated value file just because. So do you see what this does? This says if the length of the arguments is greater than 0, then I'm going to use this as the file name. Otherwise, I'll use this default because I don't want null. Or if on the other hand, I want to insist that the user do something, I can do something there. So, all right, so the next thing, a new file, and then I'll give it the file name. All right, now we're just going to silently clobber stuff. So, but here I'm going to set up the let me do this after all this. I'm going to comment this out because I don't want to. All right, so now that we've done all this, I'm going to set up the output file. So first, I'm going to establish a file writer. Import so it'll give me some hints here. And as you can see, there are a lot of different options here. But we're just gonna give it a file, that output file that we had, and it's saying that we need to surround the statement with a try-catch. Again, we'll hopefully talk about. I want to move this out of the way. Okay, so now a file writer, we could use the file writer, but again, it's always a good idea to use a buffered writer instead. And what a buffered, this kind of goes, and here's the, so in response to the question before, I can give a second argument that will be the size of the buffer, but I'm not going to worry about that now. Java was originally written by Sun Microsystems, which had a Unix we used to make Unix workstations. So one of the concepts from Unix was this idea of having these little programs that would do one thing and then you pipe them into another. And that concept kind of exists here, where I'm taking one writer and I'm stuffing it into another like this. And the first thing that I always want to do, because I will forget otherwise, is to close. You always want to kind of close any system resources, and this will close any other file writers they have. Okay, so now, oops, no, not that, 4. Oops, not int. In the key set. Okay, so now, here's how I can write to it. I just simply say append. And I can use this formatting thing using the same stuff as what we had. And what I'm going to do is this is going to be the value. I'm going to put a comma in there and put the value value counts get value. And see, this will always work because I'm iterating it over the key set. If it's not in the key set, it's not there. I just wanted to, and then one of the things that the buffered writer does provide you is with a new line. And what's useful about that is that because different platforms have different ways of different character sequences to signal a new line, then this will write whatever your platform you're running on. Okay, so now because there's nothing on the command line, this will write to a file. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, so here's my thing, and this is the file that I just created. And in fact, because it's a CSV file, I can actually open it with Excel and see the values there. And so this is where I can just sort of test this thing. I'll just kind of grab those and let's insert one of these. Oops, come on. All right, so I see that that the ones that I've generated, this is what I just created, that looks pretty good. So I can feel fairly confident that that the Gaussian, next Gaussian is indeed creating Gaussians. Again, this isn't there are statistical tests that you'd probably want to do, and the Java random number generator itself is not necessarily the most ideal one. Next quarter, you'll be using a better one. Okay, so the final piece is now here it wrote to the default one, and notice where it put it. It put it in the root directory of your project, which is where you're actually running the program from. I can actually put it somewhere else, but where is that somewhere else? So if I don't want this, I want to put something on the command line. Now, where is the command line in NetBeans? Now up here, there's this little drop-down thing that we can customize. And what this does is this provides a number of different ways of running stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'll create, what do I call it? I'll call it test counts. I can select my main class from anything that's in here. Where did I put it here? Test count and write. Okay, that's kind of what I called it. All right, so let me just kind of show you this. Actually, here, once I close, let's all right, so let's I think I've shown this before, but just to notice the output file I gave as an unqualified name, again the default one. But when I get the absolute file, or I can get the absolute path, that will tell me exactly where it is on my machine. So now notice up here, instead of where it said customize it, now I've selected the project property test counts, and now I can run it with this little green arrow here. So I hit the green arrow, and it basically does the same thing. And now I'm printing out exactly the file where it was written. So this is my user directory. This is where I put it. This is my project, and then that's where it was written. But now, supposing I want to put it somewhere else in another file. So okay, I put that in the arguments list. So the arguments now, when I run, now have to, if I run it from in here, there'll be nothing on the command line. But if I run it from here, See, it wrote this file. See, so in other words, it grabbed it from the command line because I told it to here, and I can have as many of these as you want. And what it says arguments, those are going to be the command line arguments. And those are space separated, so if I give more stuff on here and I separate them by spaces, then they will all come in to the program as this args array. And then I can put more stuff on here. So for example, if I wanted to put this value on the command line, then I'd have to kind of parse it, etc., and see whether it was there or not. Or I could insist that it be there, and insist that the first argument be the file name, stuff like that. but again, so this was the second one that I ran. This was the first one, and notice that the values are going to be a little bit different, but the outcome is going to be roughly the same. In other words, if I insert, again, this is actually just sort of a, oops, what's the recommended one? Okay, so there, again, different values, basically same result. Looks like a bell-shaped curve. So that's kind of working. All right, so again, to recap, the file, this is a way that we can interact with the file system. In this case, we're writing to a file. Here, the second thing is I'm using the map to count these things in a situation where I don't know what the possible values are going to be beforehand, but I know what type they're going to be. And I do need to make sure they're categorical. And then this is a way, not the only way, but this is a major way that I can fairly easily write stuff out to the file system. And in a way that is, this append, I can just append any arbitrary string there. I could have put the new line in here, but I like being kind of explicit about what the new line is here. And then, as we've seen, that one of the nice things about CSV files is that they can be opened using a spreadsheet.